Hello, and welcome to Through the Monocle. Today, to start our young adult novel to movie cycle, we will be discussing the classic Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Part 1 and Part 2. As always, I'm your host, Grant Ingram, and not as always, my room's a little different. I'll tell that story in a minute. But today we are going to be discussing what was personally my first Harry Potter film, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Joining me to do that, the we in this statement is my good friend, Grant Skillen. How you doing, Grant?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to be back, and I'm really happy to be here. Harry Potter is one of my favorite movie franchises, and I'm happy I was able to force you to watch it, and that I got to rewatch these myself because I forgot how good, especially part two is.
Yeah, you've been trying to make me watch this for, I think, about 2 years now.
Probably about as long as I've known you. It's like, hey, have you seen Harry Potter? No, watch it.
Yeah.
Um,
And I keep saying no until finally I think I pitched this cycle we're going to do.
mhm.
And you're like, we're going to do Harry Potter. And I said, okay, I guess.
Yeah.
So we are beginning our young adult novel to film cycle. So we're starting here with Harry Potter. We picked the two highest rated Harry Potter movies, which happen to be the
Mhm.
last two. Perfect ones to start
Yeah.
with.
It was close overall, but we're like, if we're gonna pick two movies, it makes sense to pick one and two. Though Grant hasn't seen everything, he said he's played some of the games, so he knows some of the background leading up to it.
I mean, I know
Um,
enough to be dangerous. I think Harry Potter, he survived being killed as a young child. He goes to Hogwarts. He runs into a man that thinks he's a woman, says no. I'm kidding. I don't know that much about
the
the first
boy
few.
who lived, come to die.
Yep. I knew that line because it's just famous. I knew that
And because
particular
I've quoted that probably a good amount of times,
way too much.
especially recently.
Way
But
too much. It's this and Bernie. Um,
yeah,
After this, I think next week we're going to talk about the Percy Jackson movies because there are two of those. We're at this point we're bending what each of the things means. It sort of is just movies we kind of want to watch and talk about. So
yeah.
Percy Jackson, and then we said Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. And I'm forgetting the last one, Grant. Do you remember that off the top of your head?
I was gonna
Because I've
check my
got it.
phone, but
I can
my
pull it up real
phone
quick.
is what
Yeah.
I'm currently using for my camera. Um,
Here, I've got it. It's a series of unfortunate events.
yes. How did I forget? That was my idea too.
We're gonna compare that to the movie to the series, I believe.
Yes.
Um, yeah. So we're here today to talk about Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows and kind of the franchise as a whole because I'm interested in some things. I'm not a Potterhead. These are the first two movies I've seen. I've never read any of the books. I played the Lego game when I was like 6 because I begged my dad to get it for me, and it was fantastic. Okay. So that's my Potter knowledge. I will say I really enjoyed these two movies.
Yeah.
I understand the appeal. I It's kind of like Paul Rudd, like I get it, but I also wouldn't stand in line for it. Um, but if I can find these movies, I'll probably watch them all. It
Yeah.
is also a good week to be talking about them because they just announced a reboot.
They
Um,
did. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what they do with it. I personally am a fan of the Fantastic Beast movies. Shoot me. Might just be because I just really like Harry Potter and enjoy everything that I get of it. But it'll be interesting to see what they do. I hope they don't mess it up because you have these movies that are all iconic and all really good movies.
yeah,
I just hope that they don't mess it up going back to redo it. But
and that's in the title. I asked the question: is it a relic of the past or the franchise of the future? And I definitely think they screwed some things up with going with Fantastic Beast. We talked off air last night
mhm.
about the Fantastic Beast. I didn't realize it wasn't a book. I don't think
Yeah,
you realized the screenplays were written by Rowling.
I did know for Fantastic Beasts.
The,
So
all
the
all three of them were.
Yes,
Okay.
the Fantastic Beasts book is like a textbook of all of the like Fantastic Beasts, the dragons, the stuff that are unique to the wizarding world. It's a textbook that explains all of them, where they are, how to tame them, what they don't like, stuff like that. The movies are Newt Scamander's the guy who wrote Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. So it's kind of a story about him and his journey. Then you've got Dumbledore and Grindelwald and other stuff mixed in.
Right. and there's some interesting things with those. I
Mhm.
will say, and we're going to get into this more. I think they messed up with doing that. But I'm interested to see what the series ends up being because it's a TV show.
Mhm.
Um, and each season, because they've already planned 7 seasons, like why can't they do that for every show? Each season is a book. So
Mhm.
chance for a one-to-one adaptation, which is what Taylor Murphy's been saying. You may or may not know him. He kind of runs this thing. Um, he also seems to be a fairly big Harry Potter guy, but I'm not sure. Anyway, yeah, that's where we're getting to, and these two movies, the beginning of the
Yes.
end and the end of the end, and the other version of the end.
Yes.
Yes. Um, I do want to say we're taking these aside from J.K. Rowling. Like
Mhm.
I made the joke earlier. It might have been insensitive. I'm not sure. I feel like Michael Scott in The Office sometimes. Like, but we're taking these works of art aside from the artists, which is what we'll always do here on this channel. We
Yes.
the art and the artists are very separate. Whether you love it or hate it, that's just how it is. So without further ado, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Part 1 and Part 2. Grant, thoughts on Part 1?
Yeah, so I enjoyed it. So some of the context coming out of Half Blood Prince, Dumbledore is killed by Snape. Snape is revealed to be the Half Blood Prince. Harry got some spells and some other stuff from a textbook that Snape had once owned, and that's where the name Half Blood Prince came from. So then after that, now that Dumbledore's dead, Harry, Ron, and Hermione are going and trying to get and kill all of Voldemort's Horcruxes.
Right.
Um, so I'm kind of giving you a little bit of like the story going into it. So that's where they're at this point is they're trying to find all of the Horcruxes and kill them. So that's largely, I mean, that's essentially just what all of Deathly Hallows Part One is.
Yeah, and they
Um,
weirdly enough they only find one,
yeah.
which
Um,
like I will say I would have split the movies a little differently. The first one's 2.5 hours long. The second one's like 2:10. Don't get me
mhm.
wrong, they're long. I watched both of them today, and they are long. But like I think I would have added 30 minutes to the second one and cut 20 minutes off the first one.
Yeah, you could that might have helped. Um, Although there's a lot more going on in the second one. Um,
Which is why I would have given it more time.
yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like I would have thrown an extra 20 minutes at that and maybe cut out some of the weirdness in the first one. I don't know. I'm not a Potterhead, but that's just what I would have done.
Yeah.
I will say I really enjoyed a couple of things about part one. I believe we talked last night. I was about an hour into it. I really didn't like it. The
Mhm.
rest of it though, we met Dobby again. I like Dobby. Always have liked Dobby. Dobby's a cute little joker, and there's a good clip that I want to share.
Stupid elf! You could have killed me! Dobby never meant to kill. Dobby only meant to maim or seriously injure.
I just love that line. Like it's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, so you got Derby here. Why are they rebooting this franchise again? Oh, I know, money. Yeah, no, I agree. We were just talking a little bit about it earlier. My opinion is I thought the movies overall were really good and a really good representation of the book. Obviously, you can't fit everything from a book into a 2-hour movie, but I wouldn't have been upset if they had just left it in the past and said, "Here are these, here are the books, these are for you to enjoy." But I get why they are going for the money.
I personally am hoping it's not as much of a reboot as it is kind of a retelling on the side, because we're going to get into this. I think where they screwed this franchise up is instead of going forward, which is what I as a viewer give a care about, they went back. And I understand Dumbledore's there and Newt Scamander's a person, but like they set up some sequels with this movie. Like I could
Um,
totally see these kids moving on.
Have you heard of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child?
And it wasn't good.
Yes, they did attempt to go into the future, and that happened, and then I
But
think they went, "Okay."
supposedly they're going to adapt that. That was another thing that was announced a little bit ago. With like that's what makes me think it's not a reboot. It's just kind of its own thing. Um,
Maybe.
but where I'm going with this is if you're going to write your own movies instead of doing books, just write into the future. there's more of an audience there. Like,
Mhm.
I didn't realize Fantastic Beast was Harry Potter until after the first one came out and was gone, and I had to like do some digging. Like, I didn't realize there was any sort of connection there. But yeah.
There is. I get why they went back in the past, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do when they adapt them. What we talked about earlier, Derpy. I don't know if you were here. Eventually, do a series of unfortunate events, and I've read all, but I want to say the last book or two of that series, and I really like what they did with the TV show on Netflix with that. I think they did a very good job telling all the stories. I hope that with the Harry Potter one, they do a good job like that, where they make it good, they make it entertaining, and it's not. I hope it's not obviously a we're doing this for money.
Well, it's HBO.
But
HBO's not known for being terrible, except when they are. I personally think it'll be decent. It just kind of hurts me because even as not a Potter fan, like these are very solid movies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a weird thing to be like, we're going to reboot it. It's just so weird. I'm not quite sure what this means, but I'm going to throw it on the screen anyway, because comments are nice. Thank you, Derpy.
So back to the movie. What Grant mentioned, we were talking about it last night. His comment was, "This movie is dark," and he's not talking narratively, which it kind of is.
Yeah.
But he's talking physically. This movie is dark. Like, I had my laptop brightness all the way up and it was still dark. And that's a sort of narrative thing that goes on throughout the story of the plot gets darker, but the movie itself is also getting darker as the series goes on. And when you hop into just Deathly Hallows Part 1, it's very apparent.
Yeah, and no, I figured that out pretty quickly. I'm like, this has to be a storytelling thing. But I will say, I felt like I listened to Part 1 and I actually was able to see Part 2. Like, because it might just be my monitor, my TV, I don't know. But like, there was a lot going on that I just could not distinguish from anything else.
Yeah, and Derpy said Part 2 was darker. It definitely was for parts of it. That was a continual building from Part 1. It continued getting darker.
Yeah, but like, if there was sunshine on the screen, you weren't going to see it. It was that dark. Yeah. I would totally agree here, Derpy. Yeah. If it wasn't for Dobby, I probably wouldn't recommend watching it.
Yeah. That Dobby's death at the end is so sad. What a beautiful place to be with friends.
It's like, oh. And then, like, you know, the Deathly Hallows, one of them's like the Resurrection Stone. And I kept thinking, maybe Dobby comes back.
Nope. We'll get to that.
Did you just have a seizure, or were you quoting Voldemort?
Yes. But yeah, the first movie, there's definitely some good parts, like the Seven Potters, where all of the people transform into Harry. There's behind the scenes videos of Daniel Radcliffe filming that scene, which are hilarious.
I'm sure.
Because he's behind the scenes and he's like, for example, when he's Fleur changing, he's trying to like mimic Fleur and her like body movements and her mannerisms.
Which is cool.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that because, like, as a film buff, I'm like, this is cool tech, cool acting. Like, it was really solid. Yeah.
Then we don't look exactly. Hey! Look, two grands don't look at them. They're hideous. No.
That's wow. At least that didn't look like Harry Potter did in that scene I just showed a minute ago, where he like intentionally uglified himself.
Yeah. Another funny thing was when they transformed into people. I'm forgetting their names when they were going into the ministry, and Ron talks about like his wife. Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking about his wife, and he goes, what am I going to do? My wife's all alone downstairs. Ron, you don't have a wife.
That is hilarious. There was a lot of humor mixed into it, but it was done tastefully. I like that. It's like, yeah. Appreciate it, Derpy. Yeah, we all know Grant's the Skillen's the uglier one. He's not wearing his hat. Dang it. No.
There you go. Now you're the uglier one.
Yeah. Now I really enjoyed it, and I will say, like, the number of cool people in this movie was really neat. Like Alan Rickman's in this. May he rest in peace. I love Alan Rickman. He's just fantastic. And then obviously you have the main three, of whom I can't understand why Rupert Grint never got launched to anything. Like, he went from Harry Potter to, I saw him in an Amazon TV show a couple of years ago.
I think part of it was like after the thing, he bought like a food truck and went around like making food and selling it and giving it out to people. Like, I think part of it was like intentional on his part of like, he wanted to start helping people out after.
He did movies.
This was Ingram's first watch of these movies. I have seen them before, so it was a rewatch for me. A lot of, like we were saying, a lot of the first movie is just going after the Horcruxes and not finding a ton of them. But one other funny moment is when they're in the house and Harry and Ginny are kissing and George is just sitting there. Morning.
Yeah, I thought that was fantastic. But like, I'm looking at Rupert Grint's filmography just because I'm curious. So he did Harry Potter, and in between Harry Potter movies, he always had like another movie. And then Harry Potter Part 1 and Part 2 come out. He does Into the White. He was the star of that movie in 2012. Then he did Charlie Countryman in 2013 with Shia LaBeouf, who is an actor who does things. Yes, Derpy, we did both movies. We're getting to the second part. And then he did another couple of movies. He did Postman Pat the movie, Moonwalkers, and then nothing until he was in Knock at the Cabin. But in between that, he was on TV. He was in the ABC Murders, which is what I saw him on in like 2018. He just was not interested. Like, he did nothing. Whereas like Daniel Radcliffe did nothing and it was still something. Rupert Grint just did nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still love that picture that got out of Daniel Radcliffe in the one movie in the pajamas.
Is that Guns Akimbo?
I think so. The one where he's got the two guns and
That's
like
literally
the thing,
Guns
the
Akimbo.
slippers, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, he's going crazy."
That was the first movie I ever saw with Daniel Radcliffe in it, and he was so good. Yeah, he was so good.
The last line I have that I want to talk about is when they're handing out the Polyjuice potion, Mad Eye, which there's some background with him that I don't think you know about, which is hilarious. But he goes, when he's handing out the Polyjuice potion, he goes, "Fair warning, it tastes like goblin piss." And Fred goes, "Have lots of experience with that, do you, Mad Eye?"
That sounds like a joke we'd make in a Destiny raid. It just does.
Yeah.
Sounds like,
but I don't have much more about Part 1. Part 2, though.
Part 2 was a heck of a movie.
It was. I think that's the highest rated Harry Potter movie, and rightly so. There's so many iconic moments from this movie, but it's also just an extremely well-made movie, put together well. I think it's paced well. As a movie, yeah.
I agree. As someone who slept through the first 30 minutes of it, it was fantastic. Yeah. I fell asleep. I'm going to be honest with you, the audience.
Yeah, he did. Grant.
I'm a loser. I have a life. I went outside and touched grass, and afterwards I was really tired, so I fell asleep. And then I woke up and saw the rest of this fantastic movie, and it is absolutely fantastic. Like, it is just really good. Yeah. I also baked some oatmeal cookies, so that's how my day went. Oversharing.
Yep. There's so many like funny moments, just like I mentioned earlier, iconic moments. I'm looking through the quotes on IMDb and I'm trying to put them like in order of when they happen, but I'm having a tough time doing that. But I'll just go through them. So Harry, because I'm assuming at this point, if you're watching this, you've probably seen these movies, so it's not like it matters if I go out of order.
No.
First one is Molly Weasley. I'm not going to verbatim quote this, but when Bellatrix Lestrange, yes, we pull this up. Yes, you can. Feel free to freeze, Ingram. Hold on, I got one better in a second. But when Bellatrix goes after Jenny, Molly Weasley goes, "Not my daughter, you." Beep. And then proceeds to kill Bellatrix Lestrange.
Which is pretty cool.
Yes,
Which
who is a
I will,
very, very powerful wizard.
but I will
As
say that's
someone in my
also
Xbox
something.
party, go ahead.
I will say that's something that Dobby failed to do, and Dobby is all powerful. So,
Yeah.
but so Dobby wasn't trying. He wasn't. But if he had been, he would have.
As someone else playing Xbox was said earlier, Molly went full like Mama Bear mode on Bellatrix.
Yeah, and Bellatrix died. It
Yep.
took that ugly hair with her.
Mm-hmm. Next one I've got, after Voldemort like attacks Snape and then sends Nagini to go kill Snape, and they get the tear and they go back and search the memories. You can tell Severus was always in love with Lily, and that's what motivated him to stay loyal to Dumbledore in his plan. And then at the end, when he pops his Patronus and it's still the dough, and Dumbledore says, "After all this time, always."
Mm-hmm. I really, really liked that bit. I also will say I really enjoyed the like the dream sequence. I would say dream sequence. The post-death, we're standing in the train station sequence. I really enjoyed that bit where Harry asks, "Is this all in my head or is it real?" And Dumbledore says, "Of course it's all in your head, but does that mean it isn't real?" And then, of course, Neville stands up and goes, essentially, "Screw you" to the man. And Harry wakes back up and says, "I'm the man."
Yeah. So this is a pen. I'm going to use this pen in a minute for something else. But do you know the like little baby shriveled up in the corner that was in that scene?
I did not notice that.
Okay, so in that scene with Dumbledore and I forget what the place is called, the like gateway. There's a little like baby shriveled up, like malnourished in the corner, and that is the piece of Voldemort's soul that was inside of Harry. And do you know there were some theories about Dumbledore being there and why he was there? That somehow Harry might have also had like a piece of Dumbledore's soul inside of him. Like Harry might have also somehow been a Horcrux of Dumbledore. I don't know, but
Interesting.
that's a theory I've seen. But that for sure, the little baby shriveled up is the piece of Voldemort's soul that was inside of Harry, and that shows how he was neglecting it and not giving in to that piece of soul. Because there are other people who get influenced by Voldemort and start giving into it, and other people have to break them out of it. Like that happens to Ginny earlier in the series, but it didn't happen to Harry.
Interesting. I was also like just absolutely taken aback with how good the CGI was. Like they cared, and you could tell they cared because it didn't look like a Marvel movie made yesterday. It was good. It was very good. I saw a lot of theories when I was doing some research, because so one of which was that Dumbledore was Ron traveling back in time, and that's cool. But
that's not true. But that I've seen that one.
It would probably be better than the Fantastic Beasts movies. Just saying. I appreciate that well-timed cough to agree with me.
Shout out the mom. We've got now is where the pin comes in. Arguably the most iconic line in all of this movie, if not all of the series. Harry Potter, the boy who lived, come to die.
So I swear it was abracadabra, and I'm like, that is like the worst possible spell it could have been.
Avada Kedavra, that's the killing curse. The way he says it there, I wish we had that clip. It is, I cannot not laugh at that scene. When that
I thought
happens.
it was weird. I wish I'd gotten that clip too, but instead I used my crip. I didn't grab a clip or a crip. I grabbed I grabbed the.
Stupid elf! You could have killed me! Dobby never meant to kill. Dobby only meant to maim or seriously injure.
Yeah, that was the clip I grabbed. Not the crip I grabbed. I'm not a blood. That joke's gonna get me killed. Anyway,
so there's a lot of talk about Dumbledore, and you get to hear about it in the flashbacks with Snape, where Snape says, "You've kept him alive so he can die at the proper moment. You've been raising him like a pig for slaughter." And I mean, that really is the case. Like, Dumbledore has known this entire time that Harry's gonna have to die in order for Voldemort to ultimately die. And that's why Dumbledore puts the resurrection stone inside of the golden snitch that he gives to Harry, because he knows Harry's gonna have to die, and he knows he needs that stone so he can come back to life. And that's part of the prophecy, that neither can die except at the hand of the other. But it puts a different light on Dumbledore when you know, like, well, yeah, potentially it could have been Neville, but with how stuff played out, it was Harry.
But it could have been Neville.
Yes. You only know that because I told you just before we started recording.
I just want to throw this out, because instead of rebooting Harry Potter 1 through 7, I think they just need to make a Neville Longbottom series. It just shows what Neville, the side character, was doing for 7 years. It'd be much more fascinating. Probably not, but it could be. It'd at least be better than Fantastic Beasts. Anyway,
probably
as you were.
Yeah. But that's just that's really interesting, because then you can look at this and go, Dumbledore's been manipulating this the entire time. And when you go back and look, there's a YouTube channel called the Super Carlin Brothers, and they have gone through every movie, and they've found ways that Dumbledore was manipulating the story and putting together scenarios for Harry to
be better than Fantastic Beasts.
Throw this up here. This is what we're laughing at. There we go. But you can see, if you go back and watch, knowing that, you can see, like, for example, in, I want to say it was movie 2 or 3, he hires Gilderoy Lockhart as the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor. Someone who is just absolutely not deserving of that role. And he's had Severus Snape there the entire time, who has wanted that job and was stuck with potions. But like, he hires Lockhart to show what could happen to Harry if he lets all of the fame get to his head. That's just an example of how Dumbledore manipulates stuff. They've got a full series. I'd recommend that if anyone's interested in that. Those are long episodes, like probably 20-30 minute episodes per movie or per book. But it's a really good series.
So here on our YouTube channel, let's plug someone else's. No.
Yeah.
Also subscribe. Just saying, go check that out, but subscribe here. I'm sure the culture nerd appreciates that as much as we do. Yeah. Might as well plug it. Why not? I will say it is very, like, fascinating, all the stuff. And also, had he gotten Severus Snape as the defense against the dark arts professor, I think he might as well have hired Darth Vader as the defense against the dark side professor, because, like, you're just hiring the devil as the devil.
Look at it this way, though. There's actually another thing that goes on with that position. That position got cursed by Voldemort. after Tom Riddle graduated, he wanted to become the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor, and Dumbledore would not let him because Dumbledore was even headmaster back then. Tom Riddle is Voldemort.
Right. I figured that out when Harry called him Tom.
Yeah. I
He's
forgot
just
about
Voldemort with a nose, right?
that. Voldemort before the Horcruxes.
Oh,
but
that's why he lost his nose.
yes, because he started becoming more and more like a snake.
I didn't realize that. That's cool.
Yeah, but what was I getting to? When Dumbledore denied the position, Dumbledore thinks Tom Riddle. Tom Riddle put a curse on the position where no one could hold the position for more than a year in a row. So that's another reason why there's so much turnover, is because it's cursed. Something always ends up happening to the teacher, or like for whatever reason the teacher isn't able to teach next year. It's like first movie, Quirrell's dead. Actually, does Quirrell die? I think Quirrell dies. Then there's Lockhart. There's the others. I think Snape does eventually become it. But back to what I was attempting to get to like 5 minutes ago before I started ranting. Snape would have been the perfect person to be Defense Against the Dark Arts professor because he was loyal to Dumbledore and he knows all the dark arts.
Yeah, but then he was also like evil. So there's that. That's like saying that Anakin would have been the perfect person to be the Defense Against the Dark Side professor because he liked Obi-Wan for a while and knew the dark side. Like, not really. Doesn't check out.
Another funny moment in the movie is when Harry gets back in the castle and they fight off Snape, or McGonagall fights off Snape, and then Filch runs in, students out of bed, students out of bed, students in the corridor. They're supposed to be out of bed, you blithering idiot. All right. Actually, Mr. Filch, your timing is impeccable. Could you please escort Miss Parkinson and the rest of the Slytherin house from the hall?
Yeah, I liked how they just kind of crapped on Slytherin the whole time. Yeah. And then at the end, when Harry's son was like, "Hey, what if I end up being a Slytherin?" and Harry's like, "You'll be fine, but also like if you just want to be a Gryffindor, just choose Gryffindor."
Yeah.
I want to share these because Derpy, you've been a source of great entertainment. He wants a series on Trevor the Toad, on that one special owl, on the Weasley's car, and on Moaning Myrtle, which all would be better than Fantastic Beasts.
Yeah. What was I going to reference? So, do you know how like the houses work and how they sort them?
It's based on like personality and such, right?
Yeah. It's based off of, I believe, like the person's like most like notable attributes. So like Neville has like none of the personality of what you would expect from a Gryffindor, but he's brave, and it shows at the end of the movie. He becomes that as he grows, and he pulls out the sword, and it's one of the best moments of the entire series. Because you don't expect Neville to have this epic speech and pull out the sword of Gryffindor. Like, holy crap!
Especially after, well, you did see it though early in the movie when the army is coming in, and then like I guess the force field of death stops a couple of them. And he's like, "You and whose army?" And then all of a sudden he's running on the bridge as the army breaks through.
Yeah.
So
like Gryffindor is bravery, Slytherin is like cunning and ambition. So not necessarily evil, although ambition can become evil.
But it tends to be evil.
Yeah. And then Hufflepuff is it's like service.
Yeah.
And then Ravenclaw is big brain.
Or big forehead. Peyton Manning and Grant Skillen were both in.
Yeah, Peyton's still trying to get his forehead back.
That's what happened to the rest of it they put on that statue.
Yeah. Then at the end of the movie, it's quite fitting for Harry to break the Elder Wand, because even like Ron and Hermione are like, "You could be invincible. What all can we do?" And Harry's like,
See, I don't understand why he broke it. I guess because he doesn't want anybody to have that power, but still.
Yeah. It just shows, in a sense, you can look at it when I was mentioning Dumbledore's plan. Dumbledore's plan worked.
Yeah, it did work.
I'm just reading the comment from
I
Derby.
I read that too. I don't understand it, but
I'll put it up and I'll explain it. Can't wait for the spin-off of how Hogwarts houses come together. Warner Brothers. Nope, let's fool another generation for profit because big brain, big company.
that's pretty great.
Yeah.
Now, please explain. I don't.
The second half is what Warner Brothers is saying.
Yeah, but like,
no political.
Okay, whatever. We'll figure that. I'll figure all of it out later. I'll get into Harry Potter. I'll play Hogwarts Legacy, which apparently I found out today wasn't set after the Harry Potter games or the Harry Potter movies.
It's like 100 years before. Which
just seems again like a freaking mistake. Like, I know what happens at the end. It's like, all right, guys. It's like making prequels to Star Wars. Like,
Hogwarts Legacy, though, is really well liked, but that's also placed within like the headmaster is like one of the worst headmasters in Hogwarts history. Like, there are real characters. There's like clear ancestors of like there's like Weasleys. I think is there a McGonagall? Maybe.
Regardless, that's cool, and that needs to exist for people who care about it. And then after that, like, I know how all that plays out. Somebody goes evil in like 1926, and then we end up fighting him in the mid 2000s. And then what? Like, there's got to be another threat after Harry Potter, and that is where I become interested again.
The 20s is when Grindelwald is actually bad. It's a little later when Voldemort's bad.
Voldemort was born in 26.
Someone wants an explanation of the houses. So Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, Slytherin, named after the 4 founders of the school. Godric Gryffindor. Oh boy, this is gonna test my knowledge. Is it Rowena Ravenclaw? I want to say.
That sounds
Salazar
right.
Slytherin and Helga Hufflepuff. Salazar Slytherin hid like a basilisk in the dungeon and didn't want to allow Half-Bloods into the school. That's not a joke. But there was always like this thing, like people like the heir of Slytherin's going to come back and try to take over the school, and the heir of Slytherin.
The
heir, yeah, that would be very cool if we got a series on like the founding of Hogwarts, because Godric Gryffindor ended up being the last of the ones alive, so he was like the first like official, maybe the first official headmaster because he was the last one, and then after that, like every headmaster I believe has had his office, which is interesting because people are like, oh, are there hidden offices of like Slytherin somewhere in the school that people don't know about? That's just a theory, but yeah, Derby, it'd be very cool if we got a series on the founding of the school. But yeah, so Riddle, what I was saying, Riddle was the heir of Slytherin, but technically Harry could also be too, because he had the piece of Voldemort's soul inside of him. That's why he was able to be a parcel mouth and speak to snakes. This is as much me explaining stuff to Grant as it is the audience.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, I'm very interested in this type of thing. As much as I've never really cared for it, it's cool. And like, I get why it's cool. I see the appeal, and I'll be interested in it from here out. It's just that I feel like they've ruined what made it great. Like, even if you kick it 100 years into the future, that's more interesting to me than 100 years in the past.
Yeah, I still think they'd be better off just like we have what we have. I honestly think it'd be better off just leaving it how it is.
Why? Well, from a business perspective, make more.
Yeah, I mean, if they're trying to make money, absolutely, it's something you can do. But I'm just worried because I like the Fantastic Beasts movies, but they were definitely getting worse as the series went on, and that's kind of shown by the fact I doubt we'll get 4 and 5.
Were 4 and 5 planned?
There were supposed to be 5 movies.
Oh yeah, no, they're definitely not going to happen.
They're definitely not going to happen. So I'm worried if they do make more the TV show, obviously it's going to happen, but hopefully they do a good job with that. It depends if they have Rowling.
Rowling is
Setting
on
everything.
board to make sure it fits her universe, but she's not the showrunner.
Okay. Like we mentioned earlier, we're setting everything aside of Rowling. But
Well,
I
we're
think if they
setting
have her on, that'll
everything
help.
aside from Rowling's beliefs. Like personally, I don't think you can do Harry Potter without Rowling, except for maybe Hogwarts Legacy, because I don't think she oversaw that.
I don't know.
I think it's like doing Star Wars without George Lucas.
No, she
You're just
definitely
gonna
did
screw it up.
because of the backlash. There was a lot of backlash for like streamers who were playing the game.
Yeah.
From people, but
I don't know that she was directly involved or if it was just the fact that it was a Harry Potter thing. I feel like I read that she wasn't. I'm gonna Google that for you, the audience. Well, is J.K. Rowling involved in Hogwarts Legacy? The answer is no. She was not directly involved at all.
See, I think we've probably rambled on enough at this point. There's 42 minutes of us just talking about Harry Potter.
And it was cool. Like, I'm going to be honest with you. The first movie was not my cup of tea until Dobby died. And that was awesome. Except I like Dobby. So it was also really like I'm not dumping on Dobby here. Like, Dobby was cool. But it was like,
I know what you meant, just because I know you well enough. But
yeah, like that scene was cool. I liked the idea of it, and if I cared enough, I would probably like the whole thing. Like I'll probably at some point somebody will put a gun to my head, and I'll have to watch the rest of these.
Yes. I would say if you're gonna watch them, I would watch the whole series back through. I think that'll help shed some light on a lot of stuff that's happened and help you enjoy both of the movies more because you can see the character development and the relationships between different people and why they are the way that they are.
Grant, I'm going to go ahead and pitch this right now. This is what we're going to do. We're going to pick 2 movies at random every 3 months. They cannot be 2 that fall back to back ever again. We're going to pick 2 movies at random. We got 6 left. Every 3 months. By the end of the year, I will have seen all of the Harry Potter movies.
You know what we could do? We could review them.
We
could review them one at a time for our other show.
Much talk about nothing. I would actually kind of be down for that.
And you can force me to watch something.
And I can force you to watch something, and we'll do that. But I would happily watch these. I'm very interested in them.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got them.
Heck, you know what? I'll throw in the Fantastic Beasts movies if I can make you watch Guns Akimbo and a few.
I don't know what. I'll watch that.
Guns Akimbo was a it's a Daniel Radcliffe movie that I believe was written by the Deadpool guys, but it was like a very New Zealand movie. So like these are very British. This one came out of like the New Zealand indie scene about a dude that like talked trash online watching these people do gunfights. And then woke up the next morning with guns bolted to his hands in the middle of one of these gunfights. It is incredibly entertaining and not at all anywhere similar to this. Because Daniel Radcliffe, I don't know if you've noticed, has done nothing since. Like he just does whatever he wants because he's worth hundreds of millions.
Oh, yeah.
Like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And also hundreds of millions of dollars. So since Harry Potter, he's been in Kill Your Darlings, The Woman in Black, Trainwreck, Victor Frankenstein, Swiss Army Man. He was in Now You See Me Too. That's about as mainstream as he's gotten. He was in Playmobil the movie, which is apparently a thing. I guess Lego made a movie. Playmobil might as well. Guns Akimbo. He was in Weird the Al Yankovic Story. He did that this year. He was Al Yankovic.
Oh, Weird Al Yankovic.
He was great. Weird Al in Weird the Al Yankovic movie. That's one we need to talk about on our other show too. And
it's a party in the CIA.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. Like I'm very fascinated.
All right, we should probably go ahead and wrap this episode up because we have gotten way off track.
Oh, I will say he was also in Rick and Morty this past year, and the episode. A Rick and King Mortar's Mort. He played a Knight of the Sun, which was cool. Anyway, we should wrap this up because if we don't, Grant's probably going to murder me. And I mean that very, very much not real, but probably real. So to hit our criteria, Grant, would you consider this entire series as a whole rewatchable?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm going to go with your judgment on that because I think these two movies definitely were. Would you say they succeeded in what they set out to do?
I would say so.
I guess that's just.
I think overall they're a very good representative of the books. Obviously, it's not perfect. There's some things like one moment you haven't seen. You've probably seen the video is the Dumbledore running and yelling at Harry and pinning him against the wall, saying Harry just put name in the Goblet of Fire. One of the books, he just calmly asks him.
Yeah.
But I have a video I'll send you after. But I think overall they did what they set out to do. I think it's faithful to the books overall.
Yeah, and see, that is part of my problem with this series reboot. If it isn't 1-to-1, what's the point? Like, if it's not going to be exact, I don't see a reason.
Yeah, and you also can't use the cast. Like, everyone loves Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson and Rupert Grant in these movies. Like, you can't use them. They're not kids anymore. You're going to have to find new people for us to relate to and connect with, and that's not going to be easy.
Hot take, what if you did it animated? What if you, okay, so I'm pitching this now. We're going to take an extra 2 minutes. What if you did the series animated? Use the original cast just like they're doing for the Scott Pilgrim series. Use the original cast, didn't add anything to it except to bridge, like didn't recover anything. Just bridge what the differences were and then launched into the next bit.
I don't think the cast wants to come back because I think Emma Watson's like, oh, I'll come back if the others come back, and J.K. Rowling has no input. And then the others, I think either Daniel Radcliffe or Rupert Grant's just like, nah, I'm good.
I'm sure it's Radcliffe because Radcliffe couldn't go anywhere for years. But they all returned for that 20th anniversary.
Yeah, but I think even in that, they've all stated, I don't think it's either going to be all three of them or none of them. And I'd put my money on none of them.
Probably. I don't know, though. There were rumors that they had gotten all of them back for a Cursed Child adaptation. So I don't know. Also, did you realize Robbie Coltrane had died?
No.
I didn't. He died last year? Yeah,
last year. Yes. Hagrid?
Yeah, Hagrid. He was in the reboot, or not the reboot, the special was his last on-screen appearance. Mm-hmm. Those movies were very, very British. Anyway,
rewatchable, yes.
Rewatchable, yes. They did do what they set out to do. There's another criteria, but it's going to be a yes. This is a good movie. It's our classic.
Yeah, pass or fail. Obviously, pass.
It's a fail. It sucked. No, I would definitely give it a pass. It's very solid. I enjoyed the second one a lot more than the first one, which means, honestly, I probably enjoyed the first one if I knew what the heck was going on.
You would have understood and enjoyed it more. It was definitely not as good as part two, but it's also kind of necessary.
Right, but the thing is, knowing what had happened in part one, I was equipped for part two, and I enjoyed part two. I was not equipped for part one.
Yeah.
So that, I think, might be the difference. Anyway, we have now reached the part of the show where we are once again asking for your support. If you want to support the show, you can hop over on our Patreon, patreon.com/theculturednerd, where you can throw your money at the screen for any of the shows or all of the shows by clicking on the various tiers for each of us. As always, I've been your host, Grant Ingram.
And I've been your co-host, Grant Skill, and thank you to our Patreon supporters, to Jose for the logo and Taylor for the intro.
Yep, and as always, thank you, the viewer, for joining us. Please leave a like, subscribe, hit up those QR codes, not those URL codes. The one on the left is for the Cultured Nerd in general. And if you're interested in apparently more Harry Potter content, we've got an interview coming. We were supposed to interview Wonder Woman last week. We were supposed to do it again Friday, but we're going to get to it eventually because schedules have to line up. You can scan that QR code there on the right. We're wearing the hats. We like the logo. Go subscribe to that show. It really does help us out. Yep. Thank you so much for joining us, and be sure to tune in next week as we cover the 2 Percy Jackson movies.